we have a new pope, and he's an American, Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost. Papal name, Pope Leo XIV.
Here at Columbia, protesters occupy the main library, and the NYPD makes dozens of arrests. What happens now?
And jury selection resumes at the trial of Sean Diddy Combs. We're live at the courthouse.
These stories and more coming up on CGS News. Hello, I'm Juliana Giacconi. Welcome to CGS News.
And I'm John Williams. Here's our top stories.
Catholic cardinals have chosen a new pope. American Robert Francis Prevost of Chicago, and a member of Pope Francis's inner circle. Here to break down the complex election process is CGS reporter Yumna Sukar.
White smoke poured out of the Vatican's chimney just after 6 p.m. local time. A short while later, the Vatican balcony announced Habemus Papam, meaning we have a new pope. So how did we get here? Well, the process is highly secretive and cardinals must be shielded from outsider influence. But 250 cardinals convened from all over the world. Only those under 80 years old were eligible to vote, leaving 133 cardinals. They voted daily until one candidate received a 2/3 majority. At this conclave, black smoke was released twice, meaning that no candidate had received the needed majority. But today, it was white, meaning that a new pope had been selected and accepted the position. How long does this process take? Well, historically, it takes between 1 to 3 days. The current conclave lasted just over 26 hours, which is shorter than the one of Pope Francis in 2013.
Thanks, Yumna. Back at home, a protest erupted on Columbia's campus last night. It started at Butler Library and then spilled out onto the streets around campus. We have team coverage. Anna Kane has more reaction from far and wide, but we begin with Carolina Pedrazzi live outside Butler Library. Carolina.
Yes, thank you, John. It all started here yesterday as a sit-in in Butler Library. Columbia University Apartheid Divest led the protesters, and we were here as protesters were being led out by NYPD handcuffed. We then followed the protesters as they marched around the premises of Columbia. We're currently walking up Broadway after dozens of students from Columbia University were arrested after they had a sit-in in Butler Library. The NYPD was let on campus by the Columbia administration, and hundreds of officers, many of them in riot gear, entered Butler Library and didn't allow the students out until they released identification so that they could arrest them.
Students were hurt. I was watching students come out on stretchers with shrouds over them.
A massive presence of NYPD. There were drones, there were helicopters.
Hundreds of cops stormed the building and started bringing students out, packing them into vans.
The university administration and Mayor Adams called the NYPD to campus. A variety of protesters and counter-protesters joined the rally.
That it's about time for the university to rethink its policies towards Israel.
We're on 114th and Broadway. Oh, and there's counter-protesters now arriving from the pro-Israeli side.
We as Jewish people say we are joining all these activities because we are Jews, because we are so deeply embarrassed when all of this is being done in our names.
Columbia administration said that the students who were arrested will be suspended and banned from campus. John, back to you.
Thank you, Carolina. Juliana?
Last night, Columbia's interim president, Claire Shipman, released a statement saying she brought the NYPD onto campus to secure the library. She expressed her disappointment with protesters for disrupting the library during finals week.
Columbia unequivocally rejects anti-Semitism and all other forms of harassment and discrimination. And we certainly reject a group of students, and we don't know yet whether there were outsiders involved, closing down a library in the middle of the week before finals, forcing 900 students out of their study spaces, many leaving belongings behind.
Shipman said the actions of the protesters do not align with Columbia's values. She also said she's received numerous messages from concerned parents. We continue our coverage with CGS reporter Anna Kane, who has more on the reactions from the community beyond Columbia. Anna?
Thank you, Juliana. This morning, the administration announced that Butler Library is reopened. Reactions haven't just come from campus, however. They've also come from City Hall and Washington, D.C. Last night's scenes on their cell phones. Public reaction quickly followed. Mayor Adams released a statement criticizing protesters. To parents of students protesting, Adams said, "Call your children and make clear that breaking the law is wrong and they should exit the building immediately." Secretary of State Marco Rubio called the protesters, quote, "trespassers and vandals" on X, and said the administration is reviewing the visa status of the protesters. Speaker Mike Johnson, also on X, said, "Attention pro-Hamas rioters on college campuses around the country. You are on notice." No guests allowed on campus today, but as you can see, graduation preparations are very much underway. Live from Columbia, Anna Kane, CJS News.
Thank you, Anna. John?
Back abroad now, where the conflict between India and Pakistan is escalating. India bombed Pakistan yesterday. Pakistan called the missile attack an act of war. The strike came 2 weeks after a terrorist attack in Kashmir. That attack killed 26 people. According to Pakistan, yesterday's bombing killed 31 people and injured 57. Pakistan is vowing to retaliate.
Now to the latest on President Trump's tariffs. Today, President Trump and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said they reached a trade agreement. America's initial 10% tariffs on British imports will remain in place, but higher tariffs on cars, steel, and aluminum will be reduced. In return, the UK will open its market for U.S. farm products. Meanwhile, the Trump's tariff agenda is now taking aim at Hollywood. This week, President Trump threatened a 100% tariff on movies produced outside the U.S. On his platform Truth Social, he said, "The movie industry is dying a very fast death," and claimed that films produced abroad were, quote, propaganda and a national security threat. It's unclear how Trump plans to implement these tariffs, but the impact is already being felt, with shares for Netflix, Disney, and Paramount plummeting. Still, some unions are in favor. SAG-AFTRA says it supports efforts to increase movie and TV production in the U.S. Meanwhile, the Trump administration will hold trade talks with Chinese officials as soon as this weekend. This meeting happening in Geneva could de-escalate the situation and possibly lead to a trade deal.
Meanwhile, in Memphis, a high-profile police brutality case in Tennessee has ended with an acquittal for the officers. Back in 2023, 3 officers were accused of beating and killing Tyree Nichols as he fled while trying to stop. The police officers are no longer on the force. All 3 were acquitted yesterday. They could still face prison time. They were convicted on federal charges last year.
It's been 1 week since President Trump signed an executive order to end federal funding for NPR and PBS, citing what he called political bias. CGS reporter Blythe Reese has the story.
The nonprofit news organizations NPR and PBS receive $500 million in federal funding, but President Trump wants to take that away. In a Truth Social post back in March, Trump called the radio and TV organizations, quote, "two horrible and completely biased platforms."
We have known for a while that we were going to lose funding and resources.
The Corporation for Public Broadcasting says the impacts of Trump's executive order, if it holds, won't be felt immediately.
The way it's supposed to work is that Congress is the entity that approves the federal budget. So the president is not supposed to be able to just come in and slash and burn wherever he wants. So this may be another thing that will have to be taken up by the courts, as so many of this president's executive orders have had to be challenged that way.
Is this executive order legal? Congress allocates funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and the corporation, in turn, sends funds to PBS and NPR.
Basically, even if you cut the funding, it would be 2 years from now. It wouldn't be in the next budget. It'd be the budget after that.
WJFF Radio, an NPR affiliate in the Catskills, gets 25% of its funding from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Despite the executive order, they are not losing hope.
We're going to stay committed to our local journalism, our local programming, because that's what distinguishes us from everything else in the world.
Blythe, what does the future for NPR and PBS look like?
So as of right now, the heads of PBS and NPR have said that they are looking at legal options. But as of right now, the real problem remains with the smaller networks. For small local stations like WJFF, this funding can be make or break. And it matters for their listeners as many live in news deserts and rely on these stations for information on everything from elections to severe weather. Juliana?
Thanks so much, Blythe. Here in the city, the mayoral primary is next month. New Yorkers will choose a Democratic nominee. Here's an update on where the top two contenders stand. For weeks, former Governor Andrew Cuomo has maintained his lead, now at 45%, according to a recent poll, and he has racked up over $1.52 million in donations. Zohran Mamdani, who is consistently ranked second, is currently at 22% and has raised $1.49 million. Cuomo announced recently that despite being the frontrunner, he will also be running as an independent in November.
Music mogul Sean Diddy Combs' federal trial is underway here in Manhattan. Combs is facing charges of racketeering, sex trafficking, and more. CJS reporter Callum Foote is live outside at the courthouse in Lower Manhattan with more. Callum?
Thanks so much, John. So we're out here outside the federal courthouse where the trial is set to take place. Currently, the jury is being selected. Now, this process has been going on all week, but expects to wrap up tomorrow.
At the heart of the trial are the freak-off parties that Combs allegedly held, where prosecutors say he forced some women to engage in drug-fueled sex acts with male sex workers, sometimes for days at a time. Combs, a hip-hop and cultural icon, has pleaded not guilty. He turned down a plea deal before the trial began. If convicted of the charges, he faces life in prison.
The prosecution has to show that there were victims of Mr. Combs's conduct who were forced or defrauded or coerced to get them to engage in commercial sex acts, sex for money.
Combs has been held at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn since his arrest back in September. Some experts draw parallels between the Combs case and Harvey Weinstein's. Weinstein, the former movie mogul, was found guilty of rape in 2020, but is now being retried on those charges in New York. Like Weinstein, prosecutors say Combs used his power, influence, and wealth to intimidate victims.
Yeah, the music industry definitely has a sexual violence problem. It looks very similar to the kind of open secret of sexual violence in Hollywood.
Combs has been a powerful force within the music and movie industry for decades. In 2023, he was given the keys to New York City by Mayor Eric Adams. Combs faces federal charges for racketeering, sex trafficking, and transporting to engage in prostitution.
The trial is expected to go for 8 weeks, with opening statements expected on Monday. From Lower Manhattan, I am Callum Foote for CJS News.
Thanks, Callum. On a lighter note, the annual Met Gala took place earlier this week, and the runway show and the theme have everyone talking. CJS reporter Anna Kane spoke to a fashion historian and to everyday New Yorkers to ask them what they thought.
To me, it's about education, it's about liberation, it's about joy, and it's about the self-respect that is given to yourself by dressing well and dressing with style and with humor and with wit.
On Monday, the annual Met Gala brought stars from across the globe to the Upper East Side. The gala, a benefit for the museum's Costume Institute, dates back to 1948, and it's known for its exclusive guest list. Those invited this year had to buy their ticket for $75,000. The gala's theme is tied to a fashion exhibit at the Costume Institute. This year, it's Superfine, tailoring black style.
It was, it's about black style and also about the dandy and menswear. Not necessarily breaking new ground, but, very different from what the shows typically are, certainly with their focus as is usual on women's wear.
As the gala has grown into fashion's biggest night, each look gets judged by the public.
I think this theme was really important to bring to life this year's especially, and I really did love it. I think there were some looks that really stood out more than others.
I only saw like Zendaya and Diana Ross, and I think that their outfits personally slayed.
I really love the theme. I love the focus on like black fashion, black tailors. I love the suits.
The exhibit is on display at the Metropolitan Museum of Art until the end of October. Anna Kane for CJS News.
Juliana, so the Met Gala was early this week. What are your thoughts on it?
It was absolutely fantastic. Did you see Zendaya?
Oh yeah, I saw Zendaya, and I know that she was inspired by Diana Ross, and I'm sure you saw Diana Ross because I think she took the whole night. Harlem's Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture is celebrating its 100th anniversary. I was there last night for a sneak peek of what's to come.
Tomorrow we officially turn 100 years old.
The Schomburg Center is celebrating with an exhibit about its legacy. This was the very beginning, 100 years ago. The Schomburg was called the Division of Negro Literature, History, and Prints of the 135th Street Branch, the only outpost of the public library that hired African American librarians.
It's so important because it holds archives, it holds history, it gives people inspiration for the future.
In 1926, Arturo Alfonso Schomburg, an Afro-Latino historian and curator, donated his collection of African American literature, art, and artifacts of African history. Years later, the Schomburg Center would be named in his honor.
His collection came here because people in Harlem wanted it here. So his triumph was really Harlem's triumph.
Members, patrons, and the community gathered for a preview of the exhibit and a chance to show their gratitude.
When we have an institution this rich and this incredibly diverse right here in the heart of Harlem.
This year-long celebration will feature a summer festival, new programming, book giveaways, and even a special edition Schomburg Centennial Library card. That's all for CJS News.
Thanks so much for joining us. See you next week.